So, applications of systems thinking in sustainable development. So now we have this idea of separate breaking down or separating a city or an urban area into different elements. So this one here is one approach called circles of sustainability. It has a book written about it, so I can give you a copy. So the idea is, if you click this link, is all about dividing the city into like sort of four elements. You have the economic element or system, the ecological system, the political system, and the cultural system. And then you have different grades and criteria. This will be similar to how you grade or like find a good site for a project. You have like different like categories and different point systems. For example, in politics, is the organization and governance vibrant or good? Is the enforcement of laws and justice good? Communication and movement, representation and negotiation, security and accord, dialogue and reconciliation, ethics and accountability. So it's all here on this website. And I also have a book for it if you want to read more. But in general, I just want to talk about how this approach divides both the tangible and intangible elements of a city into these four groups. So economics is about production and resourcing, exchange and transfer, accounting and regulation, consumption and use, etc., etc. I think where architects will really have the most interest in is really in the ecological and cultural sectors. So are the materials and energy uses efficient? Is water and air being managed properly? Is the flora and fauna being preserved? Habitat and food, place and space, constructions and settlements, emissions and waste, etc., etc. So with this sort of sample, this hypothetical city has very good economics, meaning they have like um, a healthy income, they have good governance, and they have like a healthy, thriving culture. But their weakness is their spatial planning. So over here, their emissions and waste are very critical. They have like a lot of waste. Construction and settlements are satisfactory, but materials and energy are what they call this highly unsatisfactory. So it's a what do you call this economic ecological issue that they're producing a lot of waste, and it's connected to the fact that their materials and energy usage aren't very good. So you can easily identify that the strengths of this area are here in green and the weaknesses are in red. So the solution should be to use the strengths like in culture, economics, and politics to feed into to create solutions for the ecological problems. Like for materials and energy, maybe because they have good governance, they can apply um, make the politicians or the what they call the people in power aware of the different problems in materials and waste so they can create policies that would reform or force builders to use more sustainable products. They can use their thriving economy to fund or incentivize different builders and developers to use more sustainable products, reduce waste, etc., and etc. So this is a very good tool for, you can even use this as a tool in your analysis for your midterms. So just very quickly, I'll just read this out loud. So this will be sort of an audiobook. Circles of Sustainability provides a way of achieving sustainability and resilience that combines qualitative and quantitative indicators. It sets up a conceptual and technology-supported framework with guiding tools for investigating problems faced by communities. The aim is to do so in such a way as to be flexibly applicable across the very different contexts of a city, community, or organization. Accordingly, the approach is particularly sensitive to the need of negotiation from local level to global. So if an area has very good governance, that shouldn't be a problem. But I think that's one of the biggest problems in the Philippines. Our governance is not very um, good, meaning like it's not transparent, it's hard to communicate with them, and it seems like government only works for a certain group of people. All of these challenges, most of the existing, all of this challenges most of the existing approaches in sustainability, including the dominant triple bottom line approach. So this was um, an approach that was sort of marketed to everyone back in 2015s. So circles of sustainability came out around like 2017, something like that, or as a reaction against the triple bottom line. Basically, the triple bottom line sort of takes a more economic approach to sustainability, like highlighting the cost effectiveness of sustainability. Like, I think I can just Google it for you guys. So the triple bottom line approach over here, you can just look at this image, looks at cost and revenue to motivate um, materials recovery facilities, waste management, and employee welfare and like citizens' welfare. So the argument is if a city is growing, it can grow even more if it manages its waste properly and it takes care of its citizens. So that's like common sense. If you pay people more, they'll be happier, they'll be willing to recycle, and then when they recycle, there's less waste. If your city has less waste, it looks better. You have less cost on maintenance, and more people would want to live in your city, increasing the tax revenue from the increased population. So that's basically the triple bottom line in like 5 seconds. But circles of sustainability goes deeper, particularly going into economics, ecology, and culture and politics for a more evidence-based approach. Because triple bottom line was like too general, but the theory is still there. Let's see here. Existing approaches are problematic to the extent that they treat economics as a domain outside of social life and characterize ecology as either an externality or contextual resource. So basically, they don't like the way that each of the elements are separated, sort of like it's in its own like silo or field, and it doesn't sort of bring together the way circles of sustainability does it. Accordingly, there are many terms that are used only with extreme care in the circles of social life approach. Externality is one of them. Others include ecosystem services and social capital. So social capital is another like very popular term you would find in YouTube videos everywhere. So the idea is again that everything in a city is connected, and if you improve one area, more likely other areas will improve as well. And then over here, this is a fairly new approach, the Sustainability Development Goals approach or the SDG approach, sort of developing the circles approach into sort of a layered, like a layered cake or a wedding cake. So this was part of a what they call this movement by the United Nations. So the 2013 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations members in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace, prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. So at its heart are 17 SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals, which are an urgent call for action by all countries, developed and developing, in a global partnership. They recognize that ending poverty and other deprivations must go hand in hand with strategies that improve health and education, reducing inequality, and spurring economic growth, all while tackling climate change and working to preserve our oceans and forests. So if you look at the wedding cake over here, so at the very base is what they call the biosphere, or basically the natural environment. So let me just open this image in new tab. Okay, I'll just save it again. It's somewhere in my downloads, but I have so many images I can't keep track. Okay, so you see here, blue is life below water, and the light green is life on land. And then on the right side is clean water sanitation, and 13 in dark green is climate action. So these are the existing elements, and sort of these are the actions that need to be done. So clean water and sanitation goes hand in hand with like preserving the life below water, and climate action basically encompasses everything else like on the land. Um, because I think for them, like the main problem is really greenhouse gas emissions. So how do we reduce that? Reducing our car usage is one thing, but on a bigger scale, think about our food. Where do we get our food? The Philippines imports a lot of ingredients from all over the world, and those the transportation of those goods create or like emit greenhouse gases. The planes, the boats, and the different sort of vehicles that are needed to get goods from one end of the world to the other. Also, our transportation, like between boats on our different islands, are also producing greenhouse gases. But on a larger scale, it's really the developed countries who are contributing the most. So countries like the US, China, Britain, they're the richest countries, but also the biggest polluters. So this is where I think the Philippine strength comes in. We're not producing as much greenhouse gases, but our the trade-off is our governance is not very good. Okay, and the next layer over here is society. So what are the problems in society? So number one is poverty. Um, the solution for which would be sustainable cities and communities, peace, justice, and strong institutions, affordable and clean energy. When on the right side over here, we have good health and well being, quality education, gender equality, and zero hunger. So since there are more items here, I think it's not arranged by solutions and problems anymore. It's more of a hodgepodge now. So you see it like blending together, kind of getting a bit muddled because that's really how complex these urban problems are. So to solve poverty, you need to like tackle it at multiple points. So you need to create cities that are both sustainable and affordable, improve education. So that requires better educational facilities as well as better training for the teachers and better training for the students. Let's see, zero hunger. So this is a sort of an idea that we can provide food. The developed countries should be providing more resources to developing countries, because really, where do developed countries get their money from? It's from immigrants. A big chunk of it is from immigration. Um, I think the U.S. is kind of like a big culprit for this because their population is a like a melting pot for different cultures, and they act like only Americans are contributing to the wealth of America, when in fact America is a country of immigrants. Okay, over here. And finally, the top of the cake is the economy. So once you have everything settled here, the biosphere and society, the end result would be decent work and economic growth, in industry innovation and infrastructure, reduce inequalities, and responsible consumption and production. So really, the previous models put economy, like the triple bottom line, economy as the most important, where here in this model the biosphere, the climate, the planet, the life below and above water are the base. So once you have this figure out, then everything comes afterwards. Current models put economy over here as the most important, but really we should be thinking of the other way around. So that's the 17 sustainable development goals. So currently, I think what are the member nations for the United Nations over here? United Nations, United Nations members, members. Let's take a look. Who are the members? Da-da-da-da. Where's my? I'm like a. It's over there. We have how many members currently? United Nations total members. Verse 2020. I think the US pulled out. 193 UN member states. 193. Let's check the list. We got Afghanistan, Albania. Let's go to U. Uganda, Ukraine, United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom of Britain, United States of America is part of the UN. Uzbekistan, blah blah blah, Vietnam, etc. Let's see, is the Philippines part of the UN? Singapore is part of it. The Philippines is part of the UN, so there's actually a lecture that will discuss these SDGs. So if I check, I think I provided you guys the link for it. No, I didn't. So let me just get that. So this lecture will happen this weekend, Saturday. If you want to attend it, let me share this link. Share, copy link, share to a group. AR2233. So SDG, Philippine SDG discussion. So they're going to talk about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and in relation to heritage, SDGs and heritage. Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. Okay. Sige. And I don't think I'll provide a quiz for this because you guys are already busy with your midterm project. And then the links are here, the history of SDG. So I think we're going to discuss that very quickly. 169 targets, 3,000 events, 1,000 population publications, and 5,000 actions. So here, the history started in June 1992 at the Earth Summit. And then they have like several researches, studies, meetings. And then we have here, let's see, member states unanimously adopted the Millennium Declaration at Millennium Summit in September 2000. So you have the Millennium Development Goals over here. So it's a continuous process. As I mentioned earlier, a couple months ago when we introduced the idea of what is urban planning, it's a continuous process of like identifying your stakeholders, analyzing the problems, proposing solutions, monitoring and evaluation, and then checking if everything works again. And then you go through the cycle again. So back in the 2000s, there were only like 8 goals. Um, Eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal primary education, promote gender equality and empowerment, and empower women, reduce child mortality, improve maternal health, combat HIV/AIDS, ensure environmental sustainability, and a global partnership for development. So even climate wasn't even on the list back then. And over here, and then slowly it becomes more and more developed. In 2012, the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development member states adopted the outcome document, "The Future We Want," in which they decided, inter alia, I wonder what that means, to launch a process to develop a set of SDGs to build upon the what they call this Millennium Development Goals back in 2000, and establish a UN high-level political forum on sustainable development. So this has been going on since 1992, and now we have the current version, which are the SDGs. Some problems you might notice right away is that who will enforce these goals? How do we get these different members to actually push through with these goals? And really, that's a big question. The UN is just a group of nations. There is really no like enforcing going on because it's all like promises and stuff. So it's really just on the word of the different leaders. And the issue here is what happens when they get a different leader in that country that doesn't agree with the SDGs, and then they'll take out or like change their mind and not push through with these goals. So this is the problem with these kinds of models because they're um, very optimistic. So that's why for us in our class, we're starting with our barangays, our local community, because this is something that's more sort of visible and enforceable. And the way we can sort of start this is with your maps. So, information, making it awareness, making the different issues of your barangay known, which I'm sure everyone who lives in your barangay know it. But for those in the other areas, like if I'm not, I can barely keep up with the problems of Cebu City, so I have no idea or like a very limited idea of what's going on in Talisay, Naga. I couldn't even find General Santos earlier. So just increasing awareness and writing about it and presenting it is really, I think, one of the first steps we need to do. And you can do it right now as a student. So over here is Cebu Province's plan for sustainable development. And San Carlos has been a part of this um, with our previous dean, Sir Joseph Michael Espina, aka Sir Yumi, who is also an urban planner, architect, and engineer who proposed the Green Loop. And I'll be like sharing different Lantawan articles that have been written in the past that you may have missed, which really goes into great detail about the different proposals and how they can achieve this goal of sustainable development. But this is, I think, the most current version of sustainability goals for Cebu province, what they call the Metro Cebu Roadmap, which highlights how Cebu City, Mandaue City, and Lapu-Lapu City will be areas for work, growth centers, with a new center in City of Naga and Danao City, like for the next, it's 2021 now. Let me just check. Yeah. So the goal is this will be the setup until like for 2030. City of Naga will be a new center, and Danao City will also be a new center. Liluan is targeted as a growth center, like entertainment, commercial, low to middle income residential areas, and cultural historic center. There's a lot of like historical buildings in Liluan. We had a project for this with the previous batch for the Liluan, the proposed Liluan intermodal transport center. I can show you the proposals. And then over here, green buffers in Talisay and Consolacion. So I think Talisay and Consolacion are not highlighted as growth areas because they're already very close to Cebu City and Mandaue City. So the goal here is just to improve the connection, the accessibility, reduce travel times, and maybe look for other modes of transportation. That's why Liluan had the proposed what they call this sea terminal was located in Liluan to help connect like Danao City and Consolacion to Cebu City and Mandaue City. So if the roads are crowded, they could take a what they call this like a ferry or a fast craft and use the waterways as a access point. And then the same thing with the city of Naga, probably a new transportation center will be placed there, and similar to Karkar City as well. Then Cordova, I know one of us is from Cordova. Your area is designated as a green buffer. So maybe your, what they call this, your goals will focus more on preserving the natural landscape and sort of like raising awareness at uh, how important the role of Cordova is as a green buffer to the whole province. And then the other areas haven't been highlighted yet because the coordination between the different cities is still very weak. And also it could be the population isn't high enough to like what do they call this uh to need like a lot of interventions at the moment. Notice Bogo City is also not part of this group. But this is, I think, the latest update for Metro Cebu was 2019, and everything got sort of put on hold because of the pandemic. I'm not sure what's happening now. I'm currently working with Cebu Leads for a proposal in Cebu City, which I mentioned earlier. So hopefully I can finish those drawings by this evening, most likely tomorrow morning, because I really have no more time. And then I'll share my results with you guys as well. So we can see how all these small projects sort of combine together, and then how I would like a top bottom, or like not really top bottom, but an overview of what all the different areas are. The coordination, the communication is really what helps cities develop and like manage our growth and create like sustainable urban areas. So for more informations here, for more informations You can click the links down here. So we have a video on the different plans in Metro, quote unquote, Metro Cebu. So the idea is that Metro Cebu will kind of be like the NCR in the Visayas. So we have the National Capital Region in Luzon, Metro Cebu with these like seven, let's see, seven cities and 13 municipalities, I think. So I'm just letting it play without the sound so you can watch it later on. Six municipalities. So in total, seven plus six, that's like 13, um, 13, what do you call that? Cities and municipalities working together. And really, the reason for these studies, these roadmaps, and the reason why we need sustainability is because we are increasing in population. So from 2010 to 2050, they've been looking into like up to 2050. We're looking at double the population with current trends. This was from 2015, so this should be updated to account for COVID. And then they identified the different risk areas, like physical risks, the flood-prone areas, and the hazards, the high slope areas. So high slope areas are also areas where landslides occur. Their reports are also available online, and if you can't find a copy, you can just tell me, and I can give you a copy. So the different development issues which I shared with my Plan One class are like this is still the same video, and they're looking at these issues over here: septage and sewerage. So this is wastewater management, solid waste management. So really, number one, when a lot of people are living together in a small area like a city or a barangay, one of the biggest problems is waste. Then the next thing, because there are so many people now, there are so many cars, so that creates traffic congestion. And because there are so many people, more people need access to clean water. Population increase is also highlighted as an issue. So if there's an area with high population, meaning more opportunities for jobs, mostly because it's a lot easier to hire people within the same area than hiring someone else from another like part of the city, another part of the province, or like importing people like from other regions. And it's even more difficult now because of the pandemic, because of the travel restrictions. Public transport terminals, again, a big issue, especially because of the pandemic. So you can't fit the same number of people into a Jeep anymore. So you need bigger transportation, mass transportation. Informal settlers are highlighted for Compostela, Consolacion, Mandaue, Cordova, Cebu, Talisay, and Minglanilla. So how do we manage those informal settlers? And also that could be hand in hand with generating jobs, because the reason why people live in these informal areas is because they don't have jobs, they don't have the money to live in like affordable houses. And also, back to the housing issue, we don't have enough affordable housing in the first place, so we need to make more. So once those like three items are like working together, then you then and only then can you solve like or approach or even make a dent in the informal settlers problem. Roads, bridges, transport, and infrastructure, so connected with moving goods and services within a urban area. Saltwater intrusion, this only happens for cities near the coast. I think all of our cities and municipalities have like are near the coast because we're an island. But it's really more important for Mandaue, Lapu-Lapu, and Talisay apparently. Economic development issues in Liloan, Consolacion, and Mandaue. Drainage issues in Cebu, Talisay, and Mingdalilia. And dumping sites slash sanitary landfill issues in Compostela and Danao. So there's really a lot of information just in this 10-minute video. So you have the different problems over there. I'll just increase the speed a bit. So you need meetings, consultations with the local government units, the people in there, and really maps and visualizations. What do you call this? Graphics, infographics are really useful tools for these kinds of discussions, especially because people who are not trained in architecture and like the visual arts have a hard time visualizing these problems. So infographics really help summarize a lot of information in a small amount of time. So over here are four strategies or visions: competitiveness, mobility, livability, and metropolitan management. So the video goes into detail about there are different definitions of what is competitiveness, what is mobility, etc., etc., and how they solve, how they address it, how they address the different strategies in their sub roadmaps or sub objectives. So mobility handles metropolitan competitiveness enhancement, urban structure and land use, urban transport and highway network, and metropolitan administration. So who manages the new transportation systems? Um, how do we develop new highways and roads? And once that is like done properly, then metropolitan competitiveness is a lot better. So if it's easier for people to move around in the city, much more easier for them to get to work or like access jobs. So reducing travel time, so they're working more and then spending less time on the road, and then they can get home so they can relax. Happy people means like ideally it shouldn't be this complicated. If you take care of your people, the city should be prosperous. So I don't know. It's probably because of our history with corruption and bad governance that the people seem sort of what do they call this, like not a priority. There's a very what they call this class divide, like between different incomes, specifically in the Philippines. Like if you're rich, you're treated in a certain way. Middle income, you're treated in a certain way. If you're poor, definitely you're treated in a whole different way. Livability connects to all these different sub roadmaps or objectives over here, etc., etc. Then roadmap for urban infrastructure and land use. So looking at population density, traffic videos, etc., etc. You can see here the highest densities are really in Cebu City, Mandaue City, and Lapu-Lapu City. It makes sense because they're the oldest cities and they have already that population base, and that creates the jobs, that creates a different what they call this infrastructure to facilitate that population and those jobs. Green Loop, composed of a creative and design manufacturing hub, trade and financial center. I don't know what the MICE is. Tourism zone in Lapu-Lapu, and the cultural and historical district here in like Old Cebu. Are like Magellan's Cross, Basilica del Santo Niño, Metropolitan Cathedral, Patria de Cebu, and I think, oh yeah, I forgot, Fort San Pedro and Plaza Independencia. Basically, the start of where, or like the oldest area in the whole Philippines, because that's where Magellan apparently, allegedly, placed his cross. I'm gonna say allegedly because I'm not an expert, and there might be some new information. New road. So this is a traffic engineering problem, which I think some urban planners, even with architectural backgrounds, can study. So proposed new roads. So let me just go back a little bit. Okay, so there's a proposed North Cebu Coastal Road, proposed Metro Cebu Circumferential Road, and then the current roads are in gray, and then additional roads in proposed Mactan dual mode bridge. So this is probably a fourth bridge. And then the Cebu Cordova link, which is finishing up. I think they've closed the two ends of the bridges, and now they're just like putting in the utilities, and it should be open, I think, later this year or maybe middle of next year. They're also thinking about BRTs. I don't know what happened to it. MRTs, this will probably be started around 2030 or maybe 2025 if if the economy holds. Once the fourth bridge, once the third bridge is completed and we may be able to like implement our new roads, then we can start to implement the what do you call this? The new trains. Congested intersection study. Oops, sorry. So you see here, even I think Cebu. No, this is not Cebu. This is Japan. We don't have like a traffic center like this where like you have like big screens and people monitoring traffic. That's something that I think Mandawi City has, but I don't know if Cebu City has it. So again, looking at competitiveness, they're using, I think they're using purchasing power, comparing purchasing power for the past um, 2015 to present. So really, the biggest attraction or strength in Cebu province is tourism, which really took a hit because of the pandemic. So I don't know what's the recovery plan for that. In the meantime, I'm just like working with people to make sure that when we do open up our travel again, when like COVID is finally solved, which will probably take another year, that we are ready for tourism, we're ready to bounce back. The question is, will the industry be able to survive for another year or another 2 years of COVID? New technology-driven industries, and this is the sort of flow chart. So regional brand, integrated brand, branding for tourism, culture and environment, social local products. So really just looking for a way to market, enticing people to visit our sites. And then the other issue here is water supply. So we are dwindling in water supply, but increasing in demand. So over here, this increase here symbolizes the demand. So demand gap in 2050 is around 437,000 cubic meters per day. So the gap is increasing. Let's see. So plus 100 plus 183 and then spikes to 145. So this red area here is the gap that there's more demand than expected water supply. Okay. Saltwater intrusion, how does that work? There are a lot of deep wells in Cebu province. So we'll have like a one because of the increase in population, more people will be drinking the fresh water. And because there's no more fresh water in these wells, that's when the sea intrudes. That's why we call it saltwater intrusion into these deep wells and basically contaminates the fresh water. So these deep wells will run out of potable water. So their idea, the goal here is to reduce um, deep well consumption, enhance our what do you call this? Let me go back here. Existing dams are like rainwater, not rainwater, but our reservoirs, water reservoirs, and these are replenished by just like the natural water cycle within the Philippines or the Cebu province. So rain comes down from the mountains, flows into the river. That process of flowing like purifies the water and like makes it like potable, and it's we can even like treat it further in these like um, sort of water plants, not water plants, management like dams. I think they also have some kind of filtration system, and of course the ever present problem of pollution, like improper waste management. So these are being done. These are being sort of addressed by um, cleaning activities and just like I don't know how we need to enforce laws, have stronger laws, stronger punishments to prevent people from throwing away all this waste. And again, that's connected to the informal settlers because they're just built everywhere and they're not sort of as sensitive because they're very poor. So if we give them houses, provide them opportunities for jobs, they might be able to get a decent enough living to stop polluting or like be educated. And then they're over here, their solution is sewage treatment plants along the different for each of the participating municipalities and cities of Metro Cebu. So how long does that take to build? I don't know. Maybe you guys can research for that. Look at our waste. And this is really just a natural, what do you call this? A natural phenomenon of a lot of people living together and just our like behavior of like requiring um, consuming so much things and then throwing out these waste. So over here, then yeah, that's like South Road Properties, what they want to do with it. We have Mandani Bay as like one of the bigger projects. Let's see, go back here. So let's see. Residential areas, commercial areas, and public service infrastructure that will be developed in SRP. So we're looking at condominium housing, more shopping malls, IT industry, and making sure that these new constructions have, oh, excuse me, adequate water supply, electrical supply facilities. Excuse me, uh, power backup in case of disaster. Okay, roadmap for metropolitan administration. So this is the governance side, the political side. So have all those organizations. Let me just show that. I'm not even familiar with all of these logos. This is Philippine Coast Guard, DTI, NYC. There's so many. I can't keep track. Philippine Information Agency, NEDA, City of Cebu, City of Danao. So different cities over here, plus IBM, CLF, CBC. I don't even know what those are. So you could probably include that if you can like find information of those organizations for your different midterm projects. So over here, probably is the most interesting graph for socioeconomic issues. Is how do they get money for these projects? So they're thinking about taking a loan from JICA. This is a Japanese company slash donors, and the loan should be approved by the Department of what is DOF again? DOF Philippines. Department of Finance. Where's the video? And then let's see, go through DOF. Once that is approved, they have the project support fund, private investors, LGUs and NGOs, private entities, and all these things will feed into the Metro Cebu Development Council Board, MCDCB, MC Metro Cebu Development CB Cebu, meaning the Metropolitan Cebu Development and Coordinating Board. So that's MCDCB. So if those guys are what do you call this, good leaders, they'll send it to the RDC. They'll approve it. They'll like study the proposals and they approve it. It goes to the, oops, the RDC. RDC Cebu meaning not red. RDC. RDC. That's the what is revenue data centers. I think that's what it is. Revenue data centers that are a part of the BIR, the Bureau of International Revenue. Okay, that and then once that's approved, it goes to NEDA, which gives the okay to the DOF, the Department of Finance, and the JICA to like, okay, we got your money, and now we're going to use this money for these such and such projects, and we'll show you the receipts, we'll show you the construction costs, etc., and etc. So once that's approved, we have the PMO. I think that's the memorandum. PMO meaning that's a project management office. So each of the what do you call this? Each of the projects will have their own committee or their office, and then it's supervised by the DPWH, the Department of Public Works and Highways, and the DOTC, which is the DOTC Philippines. Philippines. The DOTC is Department of Transportation and Communications. And then you have like a technical research and planning unit working together with the Metropolitan Cebu Development and Coordination Board. Coordinate Development and Coordinating Board. Metropolitan Cebu Development and Coordinating Board. Okay. So I think we'll make a short quiz on this video because there's so much information here. And then all of that working together should help create a sustainable Cebu province. And happy, good feelings all around. So now the main issue is that can we follow through with these programs? And I think if we pause these images here, we can see some of our teachers. Let's see. No, no one familiar yet. Oh, there's architect Yumi Espina. Um, architect Joseph Espina's father. Okay, he's there. And I can't see. I think one other faculty member should be around here somewhere. There's Alcordo, architect Alcordo. He was a faculty, I think, 5 years ago. I think he passed away now. So yeah. So this is really what they call this. What's currently happening in Cebu province. Your province might have something similar. So just do a quick Google search. You'll probably find something about it for your area. But it's happening. And I think the only problem, or is it 634? The biggest problem in Cebu City is that we haven't had a proper sort of land use plan since the 70s. So if it feels like if you live in Cebu province and Cebu City, if it feels like there's no planning going on, it's really because there hasn't been any planning going on since the Marcos era. Because there's been this push and pull, like what do you want to do? Where do we spend the money for the past, what, 50 years? And it's coordinating, corruption, all that stuff. So it's really a lot easier, I think, for me if we start out with the individual LGUs, like where we're from, study our issues there, and then make small projects that hopefully contribute to the bigger picture. And like small successful projects can be sort of the snowball or like um, the initiative or the what's the word, the trailblazer for like larger projects. So hopefully this will inspire you to make or to put some effort in your midterm projects, the zoning maps, and the identifying the different issues and possibly identifying some solutions. And then hopefully this discussion will help you with your senior high school project, looking at the different sort of angles that on the regional scale, a provincial scale, what are important. So in your senior high school project, we're talking about circulation. So that is sort of mirroring the transportation problem in Cebu province. So if you have a good circulation in your building, means it's easier for people to move around, easier for people to get to classes. Making sure you have adequate hallway sizes really makes your building a lot better and function more efficiently. What other things? Water management. Maybe you can include some, what do you call this? Uh, are there like new technologies for potable fountains or maybe waterless toilets that has been around for the past 10 years already? Maybe you can include that. I think the problem with waterless toilets is that not toilets, urinals, waterless urinals that they stink. Not so much a problem for the female toilet. So something like that. Think about water, think about transportation, think about power. I think I can give you a better example of an example of solar panels. What do you need for solar panels? Now that this house has solar panels, I can give you images for that. But for the most part, that's basically sustainability on a global scale, sustainability on a Philippine scale, and sustainability in the local scale, like our barangays and such. So with that ends our lecture for this evening. I'll stop recording here.